Welcome to a deep dive, folks. A real deep dive into one of the most pivotal periods in military history. We're talking World War I, a conflict so profound, so world-altering, that it redefined the very meaning of war itself. And at the heart of this transformation, churning away in the background, often overlooked in the popular narrative, was machinery. From the factory floors to the front lines, let's explore how technology reshaped warfare, turning the Great War into something the world had never seen. When many think of World War I, they picture trenches, right? Mud, blood, barbed wire. But to understand this war of machines, we need to rewind the tape. The story starts in the factories, not the battlefields. Before a single shot was fired, the struggle for industrial superiority was already raging. Nations became massive, interconnected war machines, churning out weapons on an unprecedented scale, rifles by the millions, artillery shells by the trainload. Every factory floor was a battlefield, the clang of machinery, the sweat of laborers, all fueling the war. Machine tools, standardized parts, assembly lines, these innovations changed how we made instruments of death. Massive armies moved on railroads, on fleets of trucks, on a scale that would have made Napoleon's head spin. This industrial revolution was the foundation of this new kind of war. Picture this, you're a soldier in the trenches. The ground, it's trembling. The air, thick with the smell of cordite and fear. A deafening roar, the sky splits open and tons of steel rain down. This was the reality of artillery in World War I. Artillery dominated the battlefield before tanks or planes, massive, mechanized beasts hurling explosive shells for miles. The Germans were early masters of this mechanized mayhem. Their Big Bertha howitzer became a legend of industrial might. Imagine a gun so large it took days to assemble, lobbing a 2,000-pound shell nearly 8 miles. Entire landscapes were reshaped by these barrages, trenches, fortifications, pulverized into a muddy, cratered moonscape. The psychological impact, the sheer terror was immeasurable. Artillery wasn't just a weapon, it was a force of nature. Now, imagine you're a soldier, stuck in that hellscape of trench warfare. Months, maybe years, you've been hunkered down, staring at the same patch of no man's land. Death, it's a constant companion. And then, on the horizon, you see something new, something monstrous, something that seems to defy all reason. Is it a hallucination, a demon from the depths of this industrial nightmare? No, my friends, it's a tank. The year is 1916, the Battle of the Somme. The British, desperate to break the stalemate of trench warfare, unleash a new weapon, the Mark I tank. These lumbering behemoths, armed with machine guns and cannons, they were designed to do what no soldier could: cross trenches, crush barbed wire, and bring the fight directly to the enemy. Now, early tanks, they were far from perfect. Slow, unreliable, prone to breakdowns, they were as much a psychological weapon as a practical one, but they represented something truly new. A glimpse into the future of warfare, where machines, not men, would lead the charge. Chapter 4, Knights of the Sky, the Dawn of Aerial Warfare. For centuries, warfare had been confined to 2 dimensions, land and sea. But World War I, it shattered that mold, adding a terrifying new dimension to the battlefield, the sky. Imagine for a moment you're a soldier on the ground, your world confined to the narrow trenches. Suddenly a new sound pierces the air, a high-pitched whine unlike anything you've ever heard before. You look up, and there, soaring high above the carnage, is a new breed of warrior, the aviator. At first, airplanes, they were little more than glorified kites, used for reconnaissance, for observing enemy positions. But it didn't take long for their potential as weapons to become clear. Soon, pilots were armed with pistols, with rifles, even with machine guns, engaging in aerial dogfights that captured the imagination of the world. And then came the bombers, clumsy, fragile machines at first, but capable of carrying payloads of explosives that could rain down destruction from above. The German Gotha bombers, they became a symbol of this new kind of terror, striking fear into the hearts of civilians and soldiers alike. The age of aerial warfare had begun, and with it, a whole new set of rules of engagement. Chapter 5, The Devil's Paintbrush, Machine Guns and the Stalemate. Now, when we talk about the weapons that defined World War I, that came to symbolize the sheer brutality of this conflict, we have to talk about the machine gun. This wasn't just another weapon, folks. It was a force multiplier, a game changer that would forever alter the face of warfare. Before the machine gun attacking, it was all about momentum, about charging across open ground, about sheer guts and glory. But the machine gun, it didn't care about your bravery, about your patriotism. It fired hundreds of rounds per minute, a wall of lead that could cut down entire formations of men in seconds. The Maxim gun, the Vickers, the German MG-08, these weapons, they became the cornerstone of defensive warfare, turning the battlefield into a killing field. Frontal assaults, once the hallmark of military victory, became suicidal. The machine gun, it forced armies to dig in, to adopt new tactics, to rely on technology and firepower over sheer manpower. Now, while the trenches of the Western Front might dominate our image of World War I, we can't forget the war at sea. A conflict just as transformative, just as reliant on these new engines of war. Imagine for a moment the vastness of the ocean, the seemingly endless horizon. Now picture massive steel behemoths, battleships and dreadnoughts, bristling with guns, clashing in a deadly ballet of firepower and maneuver. This was the age of the dreadnought, a new breed of warship, larger, faster, more heavily armed than anything the world had ever seen. These floating fortresses, they were symbols of national pride, of industrial might, and their clashes, like the Battle of Jutland, were titanic struggles that could decide the fate of nations. But beneath the waves, a new threat was emerging, the submarine. The Germans, with their U-boats, they unleashed a new kind of warfare, one that targeted not just enemy warships, but their merchant fleets, their lifelines of supplies. The submarine, it brought unrestricted warfare to the high seas, challenging the very rules of naval engagement. Now, in the annals of warfare, there are few weapons as reviled, as universally condemned, as chemical weapons. And World War I, it saw the dawn of this terrifying new era of warfare, where the tools of chemistry were turned to the dark art of mass destruction. Imagine, if you will, the trenches, already a hellscape of mud, blood, and barbed wire. Now imagine a new horror, a greenish-yellow cloud drifting across the battlefield, bringing with it a choking, burning agony. This was chlorine gas, first used by the Germans in 1915, and it ushered in a new era of chemical warfare. But chlorine was just the beginning. Phosgene, mustard gas, these new agents of death, they were designed to inflict maximum suffering, to break the stalemate of trench warfare through sheer terror. Gas masks, protective clothing, these became essential equipment, turning soldiers into strange, otherworldly figures, fighting not just the enemy but the very air they breathed. Now, when we think about the machinery of World War I, it's easy to focus on the big guns, the tanks, the planes. But behind the front lines, another less visible revolution was taking place. The revolution in communication and logistics. See, in the wars of the past, armies moved at the speed of a marching man. Information traveled no faster than a horse could run. But World War I, it was a war of vast distances, of massive armies, of complex maneuvers. To keep pace, armies had to adapt to embrace new technologies that could connect the front lines to the command centers that could keep troops supplied and on the move. The telegraph, the telephone, even the earliest forms of radio, they became essential tools of war, allowing commanders to communicate with distant units, to coordinate attacks, to respond to enemy movements in real time. And on the ground, the internal combustion engine, it was transforming the logistics of war. Trucks, motorcycles, even early armored cars, they were the unsung heroes of this conflict, keeping armies supplied with food, ammunition, and medical supplies. Warfare, it had always been about more than just fighting. It was about moving men, materials, and information, and in World War I, these new machines, they were rewriting the rules of the game. Machinery fundamentally changed the nature of warfare during World War I, making it more industrialized, mechanized, and deadly. The Great War wasn't just fought in trenches, it was fought in factories, in laboratories, in the minds of engineers and inventors. This transition laid the groundwork for even greater reliance on technology in subsequent conflicts from World War II to the modern era. However, it also contributed to the immense destruction and high casualty rates that defined the war, a sobering reminder of the human cost of technological advancement. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more historical insights.